Magnificat anima mea Dominum. My soul magnifies the Lord. From the Gospel according to St. Luke, chapter 1, verse 47. Welcome back to the Magnification Podcast. I'm your host, Lucas Jacobson. Episode 11, Musings on Disability Issues. Today I want to offer some reflections on disability issues, especially roadblocks one can encounter when they receive services from the federal and state governments. I will end this episode with positive reflections on having a disability and how those who help someone with a disability achieve their goals are doing something priceless. First of all, I want to start off my reflections with the realization that people with disabilities, including myself, must be thankful to God for the services they receive, which are quite extensive in the U.S., but especially in Minnesota in particular. With this in mind, I believe some kinks in the system need to be worked out in order that people who depend on these services can avoid disruptions in them. My intent is not to spout off angrily at people, but rather to express how hard it can be for people with disabilities and their families when the systems that are supposed to help care for them drop the ball. I am going to give you two story illustrations to highlight this point from experiences in my own life. So settle in for story time. Here we go. My first story involves the need to switch from one waiver program to another in Minnesota. These are funded by the federal government and the state through Medicaid. It was determined that for the waiver period from May 2019 to March 1st, 2020, I no longer qualified for the Developmental Disabilities Waiver, or DD waiver for short. This was due to my cognitive abilities and the fact that my new case manager reviewed what my old one had said in my case file and determined that this was the correct move for me. Therefore, I had to change to the Community Access for Disability Inclusion, CADI waiver for short. This was a big transition, and although I understood the reason, it seemed to me it would have been easier to stay on the waiver I had been on for years. Fast forward to shortly before April 30th of 2019. I get urgent notifications from my service coordinators that we needed to have two separate intake meetings on April 30th for the services provided under the new waiver in order to avoid disruptions in services. This was fine. It was just a lot of time and energy spent all at once. I think the moral of the story here is that when case loads are too big, coordinators and case managers cannot get things done in a timely manner, thus forcing the participant and their family to do a lot very quickly. I am thankful to God that we didn't have anything planned on that day, so it all worked out. My next story is something current. For some reason, the state of Minnesota had trouble adjusting the rates for waiver services this year. These get adjusted each year with a cost of living adjustment. As a result, my case manager was not able to submit the service agreements until just recently. This would be fine, except that Hennepin County is behind in putting service agreements into the system. So even though my services were supposed to start on March 1st for the new waiver year, they may not get inputted for a whole month or a little less. This is probably happening to a lot of participants that have waivers starting on March 1st. As a result, I was scrambling trying to set up a temporary budget for at least 2 services so that my mom, dad, and respite worker could get paid. I am calling on all counties to hire sufficient workers to input these agreements into the system so that we can receive services when we are supposed to. Without the input or a temporary budget, there will be no services for as long as this input takes. This is really hard for people who absolutely need services and rely on the money that comes from providing them. My other suggested solution to this problem is for counties to give the case managers the ability to input the service agreements into the system to avoid a lapse in service. I now want to switch gears and talk about insights from myself and others related to having a disability. First, one of my friends commented that it is important to let people with disabilities do activities that they can do. I would add that every person with a disability has it at a different level, so therefore they are able to do varying amounts of physical and mental activity. It is therefore important for family, friends, and staff to figure out what a person can do and to help them do it to the best of their ability. This is why I like the emphasis in service training on a person-centered approach. This means focusing on what a person likes and getting to know their personality so that one can serve them in an effective way. This also covers giving the person as much choice in daily decision making as possible. In the day program that I go to, even nonverbal clients are given 2 different choices, and then they can choose based on their preferences and communicate it with their form of yes or no. Service also focuses on goals and thus on various ways to improve a person's life. Also, when one can help choose their own goals, it makes them feel more personal. These goals can be physical, mental, social, spiritual, and emotional, and are meant to increase a person's well-being. I also wish to reflect on the fact that family members, friends, and staff are acting as Jesus did in washing the disciples' feet when they serve someone who has a disability. See John 13 verses 3 through 8. This is exercising a great form of charity, the highest Christian virtue, and the one that makes us most like God, because it means loving the person authentically. Therefore, in serving those with disabilities, people are not only helping them, but themselves as well, in that the more they serve out of love, they become more and more like Jesus, which is the goal of the Christian life. My spiritual director gave me an insight that is beneficial for those with disabilities to reflect on. When we let others help us, we are exercising charity toward them. This is something I had never thought of before. I pray that this insight can help people with disabilities embrace their disability as a means for exercising charity toward God and others by offering their sufferings to God like Jesus and letting others serve them in their necessities. My hope is that these reflections will help those that struggle with having a disability. Now I am going to reflect on how Mary's simplicity, humility, and motherhood can aid those with disabilities on their spiritual journey. First, in reflecting on the Annunciation scene from the Gospel of Luke chapter 1, we can see that Mary does not presume to have any power to effect such a wondrous thing as giving birth to the God-man by her own abilities. She knows that it's all God's doing. She takes it one step further and completely trusts that God can and will accomplish this in her life once the angel Gabriel declares that this will happen through the Holy Spirit. After this, she only states her consent and does not have any further questions. Her words of consent show her reverence for and complete dependence on God when she states, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord, be it done unto me according to your word." This scene that explains Mary's motherhood to all Christians is from the Gospel of John, where Jesus entrusts his mother to his beloved disciple, John, and vice versa, saying, "Woman, behold your son," and then to the disciple, "Behold your mother." Chapter 19, verses 26 to 27. In case people have objections to me calling Mary our spiritual mother, I would like to explain that everything in the scriptures were written for our benefit in a spiritual sense, according to St. Paul. See Romans 15:4. Also, if Jesus only meant this statement in the physical worldly sense, it would not have been included in the scriptures because it would not have pertained to our salvation. Mary's humility and simple, loving acceptance of her limits is a great model for those with disabilities in accepting their conditions and the limits that comes with it. Furthermore, since Mary is our spiritual mother, those with disabilities and all people can go to her in their sufferings and difficulties and ask her to pray to God for them, that they may receive help in carrying their crosses well. I hope and pray that these reflections and stories give you insight into the disability world, as well as for your own spiritual journey. Join me next time as we discuss the importance and usefulness of silence in our daily lives. To end this episode, I will read part of the Annunciation narrative from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 30 through 38, to hopefully give you something to meditate on in regard to your own relationship with the Lord. May God bless you and your families abundantly through the intercessions of the Blessed Virgin Mary and Saint Joseph. And the angel said to Mary, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Most High." And Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I have no husband?" And the angel said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. And therefore the child to be born will be called Holy, the Son of God." And Mary said, "Behold, I am the handmaid of the Lord. Be it done unto me according to your word."